Hello everyone, welcome to English Arcade. In this video, we will learn the first chapter of Flamingo, that is, the last lesson by Alphonse Daudet. This video will focus on the following: about the author, background information, theme of the lesson, summary of the lesson, and the symbols used in the lesson. Alphonse Daudet was one of the finest French novelists and short story writers. Fondly known as the French Dickens, Daudet was the son of a silk manufacturer. He wrote his first poems and his first novel at the age of 14 years. The features which made him stand out are his great characterization and a beautiful narrative where he gives a detailed account of his real life experiences. Looking at the background information, the last lesson is set in the days of the Franco-Prussian War, which took place from 1870 to 1871, in which France was defeated by Prussia, which was then led by Bismarck. Prussia then consisted of what now are the nations of Germany, Poland, and parts of Austria. The event which gives rise to the narrative is the announcement of the annexation of the districts of Alsace and Lorraine of northern France into the Prussian control. So the story begins with the French districts of Alsace and Lorraine passing into Prussian hands. New orders were issued according to which German language was to be taught in place of French in the two districts of Alsace and Lorraine. Daudet, like any other Frenchman, was deeply affected by the orders. Let us look at the theme of the lesson. Daudet expounds the theme of importance of freedom and patriotism in the lesson. The themes of importance of education and the preciousness of one's own language are also interwoven. Linguistic chauvinism emerges as a very strong idea reflected in the lesson. People of Alsace and Lorraine are victims of linguistic chauvinism. So the lesson highlights linguistic chauvinism of the conquerors and the pain that they inflict on the French people when they take away their right to speak and study their own language. Let us understand the lesson with the help of the summary. Franz, a young boy, was afraid of going to school as he was late to school and had not prepared the lesson on participles. So he dreaded being scolded by his teacher at school. He wanted to enjoy the beauty of nature. It was a bright sunny day. The birds were chirping in the woods. Prussian soldiers were drilling, and all that tempted him to spend the day outdoors. But he resisted and decided to go to school. As he was hurrying towards his school, he passed the town hall and saw a crowd in front of the bulletin board. He wondered why people were standing and what were they reading. All bad news, the lost battles, the drafts, and orders of the commanding officers had come from the bulletin board in the past 2 years. Franz wondered what it could be now, but he had no time to stop and ask. The blacksmith, Walker, said, "Don't go so fast, Bob. You'll get to your school in plenty of time." Franz did not understand what he meant at that time and thought the blacksmith was making fun of him. He ran towards school as fast as he could and reached school all out of breath. He noticed some changes in school. Usually when school began, there would be a lot of hustle and bustle which one could hear even outside the school gates. There would be a lot of noise, all about opening and closing of desks, children reciting their lessons together, and the teacher's great ruler rapping on the table. But that day everything was very quiet, as quiet as it would be on a Sunday morning when there is no school. He thought he would be scolded by the teacher for entering late, but the teacher did not scold him, and very politely and kindly told him to take his seat. The teacher was dressed in his best Sunday clothes. Franz took his seat, got a little comfortable, and looked around. It's then that he realized that his class looked so different. The back benches of the classroom, which would usually be empty, were occupied by the village elders that day. M. Hamel finally made the announcement that that would be his last French lesson. He said, "The order has come from Germany to teach only German in schools of Alsace and Lorraine. The new master comes tomorrow." That's when Franz realized that the village elders had come to pay their tribute to M. Hamel for 40 years of his faithful and sincere service, and had come to express their respect and solidarity with their country, France. Franz was shocked to know that. Now he realized what had been put up on the bulletin board. He regretted not learning his mother tongue when the opportunity came his way. He was full of regret. He regretted why he had not taken his lessons seriously. He will never be able to learn French again, and he felt sorry for M. Hamel, the teacher, who would have to leave the country the next day itself. Franz understood the reason why the teacher was dressed in his Sunday best clothes and why the villagers were sitting at the back. M. Hamel felt sad, as the children had not learned French yet, and it was time for him to go. He blamed everyone for lack of learning. He said that everyone was in a habit of procrastinating. The children, the parents, and he himself were to be blamed for negligence of learning. M. Hamel said that French was the most beautiful language in the world, and suggested to everyone to keep their mother tongue, the French language, close to their hearts, as he said it would be the key to their prison of slavery. M. Hamel continued to teach with all his sincerity. The atmosphere in the class was so solemn and serious that day, with the teacher teaching sincerely with utmost patience, and the students studying with absolute focus and concentration. Franz thought of pigeons and how cooing came so naturally to them. He wondered sarcastically if the Prussians would be able to control those innocent birds like pigeons too, and make them coo in German. Towards the end of the class, the clock strikes 12, and M. Hamel knows that it's time to wind up. He is so overwhelmed with emotions that he's barely able to speak. So he decides to write the parting words on the board. The parting words that he writes are "Vive la France," which means "Long live France." Through the parting words, he expresses his undying pride and love for his country and his mother tongue. Dear friends, I'm sure by now you have understood the beautiful lesson clearly. Let us look at some symbols used in the lesson. The French lesson is the first symbol used in the story. The French lesson is symbolic of the French identity, particularly at the time when it has been invaded by the Prussians. So, the school and education are ways to continue the French culture and the language. The bulletin board is another symbol. The bulletin board that hangs outside the town hall represents the oppression of the Prussian occupiers who have invaded the regions of Alsace and Lorraine. Franz tells the reader that over the past 2 years of Prussian occupation, all bad news had come from the bulletin board. The classroom in which the narrator, Franz, sits with other students and villagers to listen to M. Hamel's last lesson represents the power of education. The blackboard is a symbol of resistance via education, as reflected in the powerful message that M. Hamel writes on it towards the end of the story. He writes, "Vive la France," at the time when France has been annexed by the Prussians. And the last symbol is the French language itself. The French language is the symbol of French cultural identity. Franz's teacher, M. Hamel, tells all the pupils and villagers about the beauty of the French language, and he tells them that French language is the clearest and the most logical language in the world. M. Hamel says that the French language is the key to their French identity. So as long as the villagers and the students are able to hold on to their language, they can also hold on to their identity, and that could be a key to their freedom. Friends, let's look at the key points that we have learned in this video. Franz is afraid of going to school as he has got up late and has not prepared the lesson on participles. He wants to enjoy the beauty of nature, the bright sunshine, the birds chirping in the woods, Prussian soldiers drilling, but manages to resist and decides to go to school. On the way, he sees a crowd outside the bulletin board, but has no time to stop and ask what's happening. On reaching school, he notices an unusual silence in school. Villagers occupied the last benches. The teacher was beautifully dressed, and everybody looked sad. M. Hamel announces that it was the last lesson in French for them. Franz regrets, and he realizes he had not taken his lessons seriously. Now he understands the reason why the teacher is so well dressed and why the villagers were sitting at the back. M. Hamel realizes that all three, he himself, the children, and parents, are to be blamed for neglect of learning on the part of the children. M. Hamel says French language is the most beautiful, the clearest, and the most logical language in the world. He tells everyone to keep the language, their mother tongue, close to their heart, as it is the key to the prison of slavery. He becomes emotional towards the end, and before dismissing the class, writes on the blackboard, "Vive la France," which means long live France. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it useful, kindly like and subscribe to my channel.